In a significant geopolitical development, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in India on a four-day visit, aiming to strengthen the strategic economic partnership between Washington and New Delhi. With ambitions to double bilateral trade to $500 billion, and the deepening U.S.-China economic rift. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza worsens by day as the occupation army continues its brutal and indiscriminate assault on civilians. Amid food and water shortages, targeted attacks on shelters, and the death toll mounting daily, international aid efforts struggle to gain ground. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains adamant in continuing the war, rejecting ceasefire initiatives and clinging to power while corruption cases resurface at home. As the world watches, Gaza's cry for justice grows louder. I'm Rana Al-Khassas. Welcome to In Focus. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in India for a four-day visit focused on advancing a bilateral trade deal with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Amid escalating U.S.-China trade tensions and global economic uncertainty, as reported by The Guardian, discussions are expected to center on fast-tracking a trade agreement, especially after the United States imposed 26% tariffs on Indian goods earlier this month. The United States is India's top trading partner, with two-way trade surpassing $190 billion. Both leaders pledged to more than double bilateral trade to $500 billion. However, potential opposition from Farm Union and visa-related tensions might further complicate negotiations, according to The Guardian. The trip follows recent regional diplomacy efforts by both Washington and Beijing as they vie for influence in Asia. And for more analysis, we're joined from Washington by Peter Tanis, Chairman of Links Investment Advisory. Welcome, sir, to the show. And we start off by asking you, the United States Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in India aiming to secure a bilateral trade deal, with both countries targeting $500 billion in trade by 2030, doubling the current amount, sir. How realistic is this target, and what sectors are likely to drive such exponential growth in bilateral trade?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be with you, Rana. There are many dimensions to this visit. One of them is that India and China are, of course, the two largest countries in the world. And China is a bigger problem because we do 3 or 4 more times trade with China than we do with India. The other point is that doing a deal with India now is going to be a lot easier than the one that will be coming up with China. And they need to get this in their pockets quickly. And that's why Vance is in India today, to try to negotiate a long-term bilateral deal, which, as I mentioned, is going to be a lot easier than the next phase of negotiations with China.
Okay, sir, India's biggest farmers' union has announced nationwide protests against the trade deal and trade liberalization, sir. warning of potential harm for incomes. How might these protests influence the negotiation process at this point, sir?
Could you repeat the last part of the question?
I said, sir, that at the end, doubling. Do you want me to add to ask the question again? India's biggest farmers union has announced nationwide protests against a trade deal and trade liberalization, warning of potential harm from farm incomes, sir. How might this protests influence the negotiation process that's taking place now between J.D. Vance and India, sir?
Yeah. So the idea is, that's the whole purpose of getting into the conversation now. The current tariffs on India are prohibitive, and they're prohibitive pretty much around the world. And this is just the beginning of the negotiating stance for the Trump administration. And they have to do something about this very quickly, because the economic markets and the bond markets are in turmoil over the potential effect of the tariffs on the American economy. So this has assumed a very high priority. There are a lot of good reasons to do trade with India. India is very adept in the entire area of technology. They are also an English-speaking country for the most part, which makes doing trade and other aspects of trade a lot easier. So as I said earlier, this is going to go easier than the trade negotiations with other countries. And don't be surprised if we come away with a deal very quickly.
Sir, can I interrupt you here and ask you a question? Now, when you mention other countries, at the beginning of your first answer, sir, you mentioned that the biggest problem is China. And that's for now we're drifting to India. Do you mention by other countries a part of China, or do you mean China, sir?
Other countries. I'm sorry, Rana. Repeat the question, but the last part of the question, about other countries.
When you mentioned other countries, sir, did you mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because at the end, when I asked you the first question, sir, you said that, of course, the bigger problem was China, and that trade with China, from your own perspective, was much better than trade with India.
Yeah. Now,
you mentioned this at the beginning of the interview. Now, when you mentioned the context of other countries, sir, did you mean other countries apart than China, or did you mean better for China?
No, I said other countries will be easier to do deals with than China. Because
in China?
Yes. For example, as I mentioned, a trade deal with India will not be very difficult, and you can expect that's going to happen. There will also be trade deals with the European Union and the UK that will also come relatively quickly. They will try to do these deals simultaneously or in advance of working it with China, because China is the biggest problem. We import $500 billion worth of goods from China to the United States every year, and now we have imposed prohibitive tariffs on that trade. This can't last because it will have a very disruptive effect on the American economy in terms of tariffs, high inflation, and no lowering of interest rates, which the president wants. So they're going to look at the easier ones first, and the easier ones, as we just mentioned, will be places like India and the European Union. But simultaneously, they have to start working on a deal with China, because a deal with China is necessary to solve the potential inflationary problems in the U.S.
Okay, sir. You said that this problem or war or trade war with China cannot continue, and it cannot last. The solution, sir, from your own point of view and your own narrative.
Yeah, the solution is for Trump to back off on these prohibitive tariffs with China and work out a deal. He is good at doing that because whatever the deal is, he will tell the world that it's the best deal in the history of deals. And like his book says, the art of the deal has come through, and we now have an agreement with China. But we're not there yet, and he's got to get there. He's dealing with a formidable adversary in President Xi. President Xi has some cards too that he can play. Number one, he has much better control over his population than Trump does, because Trump's policies are starting to hurt his base. And if interest rates continue to go up, if inflation comes quickly as a result of these tariffs, Trump's popularity is going to slide dramatically. He knows it and he can't afford it. So he's got to make these deals very quickly.
Sir, the United States recently imposed a 26% tariff on some Indian goods, despite close ties between Trump and Modi. How much trust is there between the two governments when it comes to trade, given these unpredictable, sir, tariff decisions, and how will this issue be navigated during the visit?
Well, the simple answer to your question is that there's a lot of stress, but the potential good news is that both countries have an important interest in resolving these differences quickly. Uh, China's economy is not in good shape. They have some serious property problems, and the other potential issue in China is that their people aren't buying things. They are not a consumer nation. They sit on their savings. In the United States, two-thirds of our economy is consumer spending. So we've got to make sure that is not endangered by high inflation. So both countries have an urgent need to solve these problems, which is probably why they will start working on them very soon.
Sir, because I have to wrap up this interview, I need in 10 seconds, sir. You mentioned consumer spending, and you've been mentioning throughout the interview the high inflation that the United States is getting into. How do you read this, please, in 10 seconds?
Uh, the high inflation in the United States isn't here yet. They better do something about the tariffs quickly to avoid it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Tanos, Chairman of Links Investment Advisory. Thank you very much for your insights, your informative knowledge, and for your intellectual, of course, informative knowledge that you added to the program. And now let's move on to the recent developments in Gaza. The World Health Organization warns of a looming health crisis in Gaza as Israeli attacks continue and aid access remains blocked. According to the Palestinian Chronicle, at least 37 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes across the Gaza Strip on Sunday as the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate under Israel's ongoing blockade. Amid the intensifying assault, the regional director for the World Health Organization in the Eastern Mediterranean reported that Israel has blocked the entry of critical medical equipment into Gaza since March. Additionally, she described the health conditions in the besieged enclave as alarming and urged the international community to pressure for the immediate reopening of Gaza's crossing. And for more analysis, we're joined from occupied Jerusalem by Ratiba El-Nacha, member of the Palestinian National Action Committee. Welcome. Gaza is facing a crisis, shortages of food, water and medical aid due to the ongoing siege by the occupation army. What are the immediate humanitarian needs on the ground, and how effective are international organizations in meeting them under current conditions?
Starvation and hunger is spread all over Gaza Strip, including all the sectors of the community there in Gaza. The lack of medicines and medical care is what we witnessed in Gaza now. The international community, the international organization can't do anything because the lack of cooperation from the Israeli side. They are sieging Gaza, no entering for any kind of aid to Gaza Strip since more than 35 days. That means that we can talk about the humanitarian in Gaza due to this situation and this siege. So what they are doing, the international organization, nothing. They are just write reports and describe the situation in Gaza, and that's all what they can do. They can't protect their teams. They can't put pressure on Israel to enter any kind of aid, and no aid can be offered by these international organizations. So talking about the role of these organizations now, it's something far from the reality and don't work anymore in Gaza.
Oxfam and the UN have been vocal about the need for unrestricted humanitarian access. Yet Israeli bombings continue to hit aid convoys and shelters. How can the international community hold the occupation accountable for targeting civilian infrastructure and violating international law? And of course, we have to ask you here, what is hindering the international community from acting towards these atrocities and genocides that are taking place?
I think it's the political will as well as these balances of power all around the world that makes Palestine looks very tiny and not important, and making breaking the law or make the international law it's not implemented in this area of the planet Earth. So we are out of these equations and these kind of laws. This is what it seems since more than 17 months till now of these attacks and on the Palestinian people. No one take any kind of action. We witnessed several decisions from the UN, and we found like a decision from the ICC, but no one matters to really implement these decisions or take any action to stop the Israeli attacks on the Palestinian people till now. Maybe they are planning to have some steps in the near future, but I hope that they will find some Palestinian alive till then, because when we are talking about 2 million people in siege, suffering from starvation and hunger, in a very high level of hunger, till an action be taken by the international community, and we find ways of implementing the international law in Gaza Strip. I think that all the Palestinians now didn't believe anymore in the effectiveness of these international law and these international organizations anymore, since they can't have any kind of punishment or any kind of tools to put pressure on Israel to enter humanitarian aid or to implement any kind of agreements or international law the humanitarian law on Palestine. We witnessed as well 2 weeks ago a decision from the Israeli court says that the situation in Gaza is not like a situation that we can implement the international law on it, and it's out of these laws. So what can we say about Israel that turned its backs to all these international laws and agreements and didn't respect any resolution from the UN or any other international organization anymore?
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists the war will not end until all detainees are returned and Hamas is eliminated. Is this a real goal on the ground or merely a pretext to prolong aggression and deflect from his political crises at home?
I think that Netanyahu didn't put the returning back of the hostages, Israeli hostages, in his priorities since the beginning of this war from day one. And I think that everyone believes that he didn't aim to return the hostages since the beginning till now. I think that the Israeli community, before the international community now, believe that he is very far away from returning any of the hostages, and he didn't put any effort even to return them back. So he's using the negotiation just to have like a window of time to attack Gaza and to achieve other hidden goals.
Dr. Atiba, not only attack Gaza, but to displace the citizens of Gaza and overtake Gaza. This is one of the targets.
Yes, I think that Smotrich today say it in a loud voice that the aim of this war is to reoccupy Gaza and to rule Gaza. It's not about eliminating Hamas or returning the hostages, and he says that returning the hostages is not in the priority or the top priority of this government, and they are not aiming from this attack to return the hostages alive. So they have like a time to achieve their goals, and these goals are to reoccupy Gaza Strip as well as the West Bank.
Despite global outrage, Israel continues to reject ceasefire proposals that include the release of Israeli detainees. What does the refusal indicate about the true objectives of the occupation, and how might it backfire internationally?
I think that the ceasefire and the deal can be implemented just by force, because this is the language that...
Could you come again? Because I didn't get this, please, Dr. Atiba?
Yes.
Could you?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Can you answer again the question, please? Because I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I said that.
Do you want the question again?
Yeah. Please, yeah.
Okay. My question was at this point that Prime Minister, that despite global outrage, Israel continues to reject ceasefire proposals that include the release of Israeli detainees. What does this refusal indicate about the true objectives of the occupation, and how might it backfire internationally?
As I said, the real aim and goal of this attack on Gaza is to occupy Gaza. They want to achieve the great Israel dream, and this dream can't be achieved without controlling the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And that means that Israel will not respect and agree on any kind of agreements or deals. And they can't just understand the language of force and power. So we must put power and pressure on the United States at first, because it's, I think, the only player that can put pressure on Israel. And this pressure can be implemented or forced by uniting the Arab and the Islamic position and use the strategic
But everyone is working on uniting the Arab and of course Islamic position, and it's working, Dr. Atiba, at this
Yes,
point.
I think it's work in changing the United States mind about the situation in Gaza and transferring the people in Gaza. They believe now that there's a way of rebuilding Gaza because of this situation. Trump changed his mind and says that yes, we can deal with Gaza with the Palestinian on it. So I think yes, there's a kind of pressure that we can play and implement as the Arab states together to force the Israeli lobby and the Jewish lobby in the United States, and we can create a point of power, economic power, and maybe other kinds of power that can aim the interests of the United States and make a pressure on it to accept the Arab states situation about the two-state solution and the Palestinian state, and all of these plans that we want as Palestinian, and I think that the Arab states support us.
Of course, Dr. Tibel Nacha, I couldn't thank you more for your valuable knowledge and your informative knowledge. A member of the Palestinian, Dr. Atiba, member of the Palestinian National Action Committee. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Focus. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up here on Qnews.